welcome to Mental Health Matters. My name is Barbara Myers. Today on our show, we're going to focus on a very timely topic, the mental health challenges that one has in tough economic times. And to help us discuss this topic, we have two special guests. First, I'd like to introduce Elizabeth McMahon. She's a PhD, a clinical psychologist, and works at Kaiser Permanente here in Fremont. Dr. McMahon is also a respected speaker on many topics related to mental health and wellness, and is the published author of 4 books on coping with chronic illness. Welcome, Elizabeth. And our second guest is Chuck Castagnolo. He's the founder and executive director of Bridges to Jobs, and Chuck has also experienced tough economic times himself. Welcome, Chuck.
Thank you, Barbara. I'm glad to be here.
What kinds of reactions do people have when they learn that they're under the stress that we have in these tough economic times?
Well, financial problems and uncertainty are tremendously stressful. It's very natural to become anxious, worried. Certainly we can become sad, even depressed, because of changes that we didn't expect and don't want. Mm-hmm. We can become angry and resentful, or ashamed, guilty, isolated, as if we're alone, as if we're the only one this is happening to, or it's all fault. And then it's very tempting to turn to alcohol or drugs to feel better. But these reactions, although understandable, are unhelpful. They make everything worse, and they make us feel more out of control, more helpless.
Mm-hmm. Now, people who can undergo a big shock when they lose their job or feel financial stress, what kinds of things are important to keep in mind when dealing with these situations?
I think the key point to remember is your job may be over, but your life is not over. Regardless of what happens to your finances, you have meaning and value and worth. And no matter what happens financially, you're not helpless. There are things that you can do to lift your mood, to improve your resilience, and to protect yourself from the negative effect of stress.
You said there were some things that were unhelpful, so can you give me some more about details about what kinds of things are unhelpful before we turn to the helpful things?
Well, there are 4 particularly unhelpful ways of thinking about financial stresses. One is to focus on the losses and the negatives about your situation or your life. Mm-hmm. Another is to think over and over and over about the worst possible outcome. Mm-hmm. Another is to focus on blaming who's to blame. And the final particularly unhelpful way is to make unrealistic demands, to demand that you have a job within a certain period of time, to demand certainty when certainty isn't possible.
Now that we know what doesn't work, can you tell us some specific and effective techniques that people can do to reduce stress, worrying, and anxiety, and maintain their mental health in these kind of situations?
Yes, I'll cover 5 techniques.
Okay.
The first is to very actively and deliberately notice the positives that are still present in your life. And one of the best ways to do that is toward the end of the day to sit down and write down 3 good things that happened in the course of that day, and perhaps a sentence or 2 about why each one happened. Mm-hmm. It could be that the sun rose. It could be a child's smile. Mm-hmm. It could be natural beauty. It could be that you helped someone or someone helped you. But to notice and deliberately recall 3 good things that happened in that day.
Okay.
The second thing you can do is practice helpful thinking. Mm-hmm. To talk to yourself the way you would talk to your best friend. To be realistic and encouraging and supportive and caring. Mm-hmm. Now the final 3 are techniques that are particularly helpful for worries and fears and distressing, upsetting thoughts that come into your mind over and over and over.
Okay.
The first may sound a little crazy. You schedule a worry time. Mm-hmm. So that every day you sit down and you do 24 hours worth of worrying in that time. You pour out all the negative thoughts, all the fears, all the anxieties out of you onto paper. Mm-hmm. And then when they start to come in the rest of the time, you say to them, wait, stop. You make a note, you promise them, I'll think about you during tomorrow's worry time. And then you go on about your business. So it gives it an outlet for those concerns, helps you identify them and get them outside of you. You then do the next technique, which is, at another time, you begin to question those thoughts. Simply because a thought is convincing and scary doesn't make it true. So you take your fears, your concerns, your upsetting thoughts, and you go and you look at actually what the facts say about them. And this is, you can sit down and make a 2-table column with lots of rows and put each fear or upsetting thought per row. And on the other column goes the facts, the objective evidence. Is there another way to think about it? The helpful thoughts. So you question these thoughts.
So can you give an example of a thought?
Exactly. Perhaps I'm worrying, I'm a failure, I'll never get another job, my life is over, this is terrible, I can't cope, and it's all my fault. I would then, having poured that out, sit down, and I would take each one of those one at a time. Perhaps I'm a failure would go on the upsetting thought side. And on the other side, I would say, I'm not working, and I'm having trouble finding a job, and we're in financial trouble. That's all true. And I have good friends. I am a good friend. I'm a good spouse. I'm a good parent. I have worked successfully at jobs. I have talents. And I don't know what the future will bring. This may just be temporary.
So it keeps somebody from being all negative, and they see things in a more realistic way.
Precisely.
Okay.
Now, sometimes the facts are pretty ugly, and that's when you have to turn to the last technique. So when the facts agree, if the fear is I'm going to lose my house, and the facts are I'm not working, my spouse isn't working, we're 6 months behind on the house payments, and I've maxed out my credit cards, when the facts agree, then what you do is you sit down and you say, all right, I have a problem, what am I going to do? And you come up with your best plan. And then you think, well, what could go wrong? And you come up with a backup to your plan. And what could go wrong with that? And a backup to your backup. Until you've come up with the best plan you can. Maybe not a great plan that you're happy with. You know, you probably didn't choose to be here. But the best you can. And then be at peace. And when you begin to worry, when the worry tries to come back, remind yourself that you have a plan and you're following your plan. Accept that a certain amount of uncertainty and stress in life is inevitable, but postpone the worrying to your next worry time.
It sounds like a very positive way to look at one's problems, and a way to sort of, you know, put them in perspective and then find solutions, you know, for what's there. So,
yes.
Thank you. So you use this with your clients and it works?
I do, and it works. I use it myself and it works.
Oh, good. Can you tell us some more general stress management skills that one might put into play?
Many people find physical exercise is an excellent stress management, stress reduction technique, and that could be anything from sports to walking to Tai Chi or yoga or Qigong. So there's physical exercise. There are also spiritual practices, which many people find tremendously helpful, such as it could be anything from prayer to meditation, chanting to mindfulness. And then there are general techniques like slow, deep breathing, muscle relaxation, guided imagery. Notice what lifts your spirits. Do what you enjoy. Reach out to other people and take care of your health.
Oh, good. Those are all good ideas. I know I've used some of those myself, and they're very helpful. When should someone seek professional help in their managing their stress? When does it be appropriate to do that?
There are probably 4 red flags, 4 signs that you should seek professional help. One is if you are so depressed that it's hard to get through the day and you're having thoughts of killing yourself. Another is if you are so angry that you're having thoughts of hurting other people. A third is if your use of alcohol or drugs is causing problems in your life or with your relationships. And the fourth is if you're having panic attacks or your worry is so constant that it's just interfering with your life. If any of those 4 are occurring, please talk to your doctor or go to a community mental health center, because the take-home message is you don't have to suffer. There are effective treatments for all of these, and life can get better.
Good. Okay. Well, thank you. Okay, I'd like to speak with Chuck now. I know that you have yourself gone through tough economic times. Can you tell us a little bit about the circumstances?
I can. Just as this economic cycle was starting its downturn, I lost my job. And in the past, I've never had trouble getting a job. I would always be able to put my resume up on the internet, and within a day or two, I would always get a call, and within a week and a half, 2 weeks, I'd have a job. This time around, however, nobody was calling. The phone wasn't ringing. I wasn't even getting an email response back, "We got your resume, thanks." And I started to think, what is wrong with me? Why can't I get a job? And as a result of that, a lot of the same things that you mentioned, I was starting to feel depressed, staying at home, panic attacks. You sit with the drapes closed, not wanting to go outside. And finally, I reached the point where I was pushed out of the house, and I found some people who were in similar situations. And all of a sudden, you find out that it's not you. It's the situation. It's the environment that we're in, and especially right now with so many people out of work. I tell people, it's not you. There's 600,000 other people that are like you this month, and that helps a lot. And as I realized that it wasn't me, and people said it's okay, then I started to realize I can get better. And one of the things that I found from having read about what was happening to me is I was going through a grieving process. And I think you'll agree the grieving process of losing a job is very much as if someone had died. And you go through all the same
So your job has died, or your
job has died,
or your experience of yourself in that job has died.
That's correct. So many people identify who they are through their job. Because you say, what do you do? And I am A. And when you lose that ability to say I am A, then you don't know what to do. So people struggle with that. And one of the things that I realized is I am not A, I am Chuck. And I realized that Chuck's okay. And once I turned that corner, everything started to happen. And we all go through the grieving process at some rate. And one of the big parts of knowing you've turned that corner is when you've decided that, okay, I'm Chuck, I'm who I am, it's time to get up off the couch and start doing something. And I always tell people to start doing something, because if you don't start, nothing will happen. So you have to make it by doing something.
Most effective thing you found for yourself is to just sort of mentally get over that idea that I am Chuck and I'm okay.
One of the things that I like to do, and it sounds very narcissistic, is to look in the mirror and go, I'm okay. I like Chuck. And I like to tell people to do the same thing too. And some of the training that I do, I tell people, look in the mirror and you have to say, I love you. Because if you can't love you, who's going to love you? You have to start loving you before other people will love you. And I think it's hard for people to accept loving themselves because they think that's very selfish. But it's not selfish, it's healthy. And once you've achieved that sense of I'm who I am and I'm a good person and I love myself, you can get out into the world and you'll have that aura that says I'm good. And people will start being attracted to you.
Respond to that.
Respond to that.
How has this experience affected your life, both the good and the bad?
Well, the bad part was I got into a very deep depression, and you start wondering what's wrong with me, how come nothing good is happening to me. But the good part about it is that I was able to jumpstart a group called Bridges to Jobs, and that's a group where we help people who are out of work, much like I was. And as a result of that, I've brought almost 380 people together now, and we teach them the grief part, and we teach them self-esteem, we teach them self-confidence, so that when they go into a job interview, they exude all of those things. They don't go in there with the panic that I have to have this job. They go in there with the sense that I'm your candidate. And that, from my perspective, has just bloated my ego, and that I'm actually helping somebody. So, I look I'm going to be able to look back on my life, and when someone says, "What did you do?" and I'm going to be able to say with a very high head, I helped a lot of people get through some really bad times.
Yeah.
And when we get through this time, I think a lot of people will have been helped as a result of that.
What gave you hope when you were at the sort of the bottom of your slide there?
I've always been a positive person, even if when I felt like I didn't have hope. I always used to think something will happen, something will happen. And again, I think it's you just reach that point where you hit bottom and you go, I can't go any further because I've so far to look up at. But you just reach that point, I think. Again, it's part of that grieving cycle that we have to go through. And once you go through all of the parts of the grieving thing, where you actually hit the bottom and you decide today's the day I'm going to turn the corner, that's when you start to go up and do something with it. And I think that's really important, because once you've decided that today's the day, then you have a purpose for living. You have a purpose for getting up in the morning. You have a purpose for just being, and you have a goal you can start achieving. And as long as you can set something up, today I'm going to send out 3 resumes. Today I'm going to call somebody. Today I'm going to go somewhere and try to help someone. And then at the end of the day, you can say, look what I've achieved today.
I did it.
And I did it. And that starts to build on itself. It builds a momentum, just like you have that downward spiral when you're going through the grief. Once you turn that corner, that momentum spins the other way, and you start going up. And that is, I have seen that happen to so many people where they've just bottomed out. And I said, it's okay. It's not you. It's the environment we're in. You're a good person. You'll be okay. Just start doing something. And I see them start to do something. They come back in a couple of weeks, and I just see them. You can see it in their faces, how they've risen up, and now they have hope in their face.
Yeah, so it's sort of like they know that they're not alone.
Yes.
It's,
right.
That there are people that are pulling for them,
Yes.
and they all have their own inner resolve, which maybe they had lost
Yes.
touch with.
Yes.
Can you tell us a little bit more about the stages of grief?
I can.
Yes.
What I found through my study of it is that you go through what I call denial. I couldn't have lost my job. I'm going to get up and go to work, but then you get up and you make your coffee and your breakfast and realize you can't go to work. So you're kind of denying it. You're not paying attention to it. The second step is numbness, and this is where you have difficulty feeling anything. You're just numb. You don't have any feeling. Yeah, you're sort of spaced out. You're watching television and the TV clicker's going like this, and you're not really paying attention to what's going on. You're not there. The second one is the depression that you talked about, Elizabeth, where people just really crash into that. And I tell people all the time, be really aware of if you're in the depression, and then go see somebody, especially if you have those feelings that you were talking about, which can be really devastating. And I tell people, if you're kicking a dog, or you're hollering at your kids, or you're being mean to your spouse, you need to step back and go, time out, I'm really sorry, I'm going through job loss grief, I'm in depression right now, and I'm trying to get over it. And that seems to help once you accept that. The next step is what I call disorganization or despair, where you're just spinning your wheels, nothing's happening, and you just go, why bother? I'm not going to get a job anyways. And then once you've gotten through that, and these don't always fall in this order, but they tend to, in a global sense, you reach the point like I did where you start to reorganize yourself, and you go, okay, today I'm going to do something. Okay, I'm going to do a resume. I'm going to make a phone call. I'm going to get out of the house and go do something. Once you've taken that step, you've reversed the course. And instead of being in that downward spiral, now you're climbing out of that depression that you were in, and you can really start to make something happen for yourself.
Yeah, I think it could use some of your tools at that point.
Right, exactly, yes.
Yeah. I think that's probably really helpful to people to know that there is a process that they're going through, so that they'll realize that, oh, okay, I must be in that step of it, instead of just feeling at total loss for everything.
That's very true. I've talked to a lot of people as we were building this particular module that we have with our group, and they'd say, I was feeling like that. That's exactly what happened to me. And as I was talking to people, as I was putting this together, I go, I'm onto something.
Yeah.
And I realized that we all go through that. We go through it in different stages, at different speeds, at
And
different
sometimes,
times.
yeah, you go back and forth and repeat a stage.
Exactly.
But you
Exactly.
can identify that there are different
Exactly.
steps. Yeah.
Exactly.
I think that gives people hope too, because they can see, oh, okay, this is a way out.
Right. It's a
I'm
way
I'm
out.
on this
Exactly.
path, and
Right.
I
Yes.
get,
There's a path forward.
And I tell people, don't fight it. Just go with it. Understand where you are. Recognize where you are. And go, okay, here's where I am today. It's okay. And move on. Because you don't want to backslide and re-enter that depression stage. But just understand where you are, accept it. Okay, here's where I am, and move on.
Move forward.
Elizabeth, I understand there was a time in your career path when you had sort of lost your way. Can you tell us anything about that might help us understand things?
There was certainly a time in my life when my life plans and my expectations completely fell apart. I had no idea what I was going to do. And I really had to let go of all my previous expectations, step back, and reflect on where I was now and how I would move forward. And when I look back at that, I would say that there were two sayings that sort of captured that time. One is the saying, every problem comes bearing a gift in its hands. And the other is the very wise saying, this too shall pass. So what came out of that was really a renewed understanding of where I wanted to go. And I would hope that the take-home message is, look for the opportunity that's hidden in the difficulty facing you.
That's really profound.
I would agree with that 100%. And if I could add to the spirituality part, I think sometimes it's letting go. And let go of it. And let a higher being take care of it. Say, okay, I'm done. You do it. And go with that. Sometimes can just change your entire life. So I think what you're saying is really grounded in some good thought.
That can be very helpful for some people.
Now, what could family and friends do? We've been talking about the individual themselves who've lost their job, but what about their family? They're suffering vicariously, I guess, and what can they do to help their loved one?
Keep reminding your loved one that you love them. Secondly, urge them to use the skills that are described today. And if you didn't get all the details of all the techniques, don't worry, it will be on the website.
Yes, it will.
And thirdly, urge them to seek professional help if they have so much depression, worry, anger, or alcohol, drug problems that it's interfering in their lives.
Could you briefly tell us about some of the services that are available at Kaiser?
Kaiser Permanente offers medical care, mental health services, and drug and alcohol treatment for Kaiser members. But many people don't know that they also offer health education classes and online information and resources to people in the community at large. You don't have to be a Kaiser member to use these services.
Okay.
So go online to www.kaiserpermanente, all one word, kaiserpermanente.org, and click on Health and Wellness. You'll find information about maintaining your health, anxiety, stress, and you can learn about the health education classes, many of which are open to members of the community, including classes on yoga, tai chi, qigong, classes on stress reduction, anxiety reduction, overcoming depression, communication skills, dealing with anger.
Oh, that's great.
Lots of things.
Well, thank you.
You're welcome.
And Chuck, could you briefly tell us about some of the services at Bridges to Jobs?
Okay, at Bridges to Jobs, we're primarily a job support group. We pride ourselves in the training that we have available. It helps people to really polish up on the skills in order to interview and write a good resume and have really good body language and have that confidence and feeling good about themselves when they go into an interview. So we have a lot of good people. We meet on Saturdays and very supportive.
Great. Now I'd like to talk to you who are in the viewing audience. I'd like you to think whether you know someone who is struggling in these tough economic times that might benefit from mental health care or for some of the suggestions that we've heard here. If so, I want you to think of what you can do to say something to them that might be able to help them out of it. So that's your assignment. There are some resources and organizations that I'd like to point out. Kaiser Permanente's website, www.kaiserpermanente.org. With lots of online resources, finding a clinic, and a list of classes that are open to the public. Bridges to Jobs, which is Chuck's group, is at bridgestojobs.org. And this is for, like he said, people seeking work, emotional support in a safe environment, and for classes that help people in job search-oriented techniques. And then I'd also like to point out East Bay Works, which is a service that offers employment services and referrals to jobs, training, and education in the environment here at www.eastbayworks.org. And there'll be a lot of other resources and organizations on the website. I'd like to thank you, Elizabeth, and thank you, Chuck, for being on this show.
Thank you, Barbara.
I'm sure what you've told us is going to be very helpful to many people. In closing, I'd like to say, take courage, friends. The way is often hard, the path is never clear, and the stakes are very high. Take courage, for deep down, there is another truth. You are not alone. Thank you for watching. I'll see you next time.